Hi, my name is Luz Maria Huerta Garibay, and today I'm going to be comparing the Latin American Boom documentary with the article that further explained the story of Blow Up by Julio Cortazar. The Latin American Boom is a generation of mass production of literacy which occurred during the 1960s and the 1970s. It is when the writing during this time was a blend of fantasy, magic, and journalism stories. The literacy written was all written from exile, meaning the authors who wrote these stories and poetry lived in a different country. Some of them was by choice and some of them was by force. Some of the famous writers during the boom was Julio Cortazar, Mario Vargas Llosa, José Donoso, Carlos Fuentes, and Gabriel García Márquez. And all of these authors had in common was that they all wrote with a political view, a political side. They wrote something that was going on in their time, which was during the boom, that was politically happening. I chose to compare the documentary to the article of Blow Up. In the article, it explains that Blow Up was published in 1959 during the year of the Cuban Revolution. The protagonist of Blow Up is a French-Chileno translator who lives in Paris named Robert Michael. This character lives in Paris, as I mentioned, but has a Southern American identity. This is something that both the protagonist, Michael, and the author, Cortazar, have in common. As mentioned in the documentary, Julio Cortazar left his country in 1951 to work as an independent translator for UNESCO in Paris. The narrator describes both in first and third person narrative. The narrative refraction is caused by two machines involved in the telling of the story, which in the story is the typewriter as well as the camera, and through the personification in form of interrupting voices. The main idea that the quote that I found from the article that I thought was a good main idea of both is Cortazar's incorporation of machines in his text serves as a kind of allegory for historic shifts that technology imposes on our subjectivity and our emerging awareness of such a shift. Since he wrote during the Cuban Revolution, it did have some political reasoning behind his writing. He used the portrayal of shock to remind the readers that violence should be shocking. After the Cuban Revolution, which occurred in 1951, he began to write more about politics, or more political-sided writings. As mentioned in the article, Cortazar produces an effect directed at the realization of future forms by defying rational thought and devouring to produce revolutionary agency through an aesthetic mean. As explained in the documentary, his narrative is what one could consider experimental, which is a style of writing that wasn't seen and was not very common during the time. Typically, the readers were very used to the standard writing, but in his text, his characters were very different. We see that his texts we don't know who's the narrator. There is a mix-up of point of views as well as perspectives, and they all had the commentary that we as the readers did not know who was who as well as what was happening. We didn't have a sense of time of the characters, which made us as the readers work a little more and think a little more in order to actually understand the story. And then these are all characteristics of the boom, which were authors during this time treated their stories as non-linear. When you were reading the stories as well as the poetries during the Latin American boom, a lot of these had in common that time was non-linear, and oftentimes it was the perspectives that were different. There was different narration, voices such as interior as well as exterior, and there is a whole lot of puns as well as there is profanity used. The mixture of reality and fantasy was a huge one for sure, that I could see that both the documentary explained as well as the article had in common with the story of Blow Up by Julio Cortazar. And this is also known as magic realism. Thank you.